In this new life, I finally found out that it was my parents' adopted daughter who was behind me losing the chance to return to the city. In my previous life, not only did she inherit my parents' estate, but she also got my fiancé. Pearl, listen to me. Come here. I was dazed. I pulled to the back of the adobe house. Rosie whispered, how can you still be in the mood to sleep? Do you know where I saw Wendy coming out from this afternoon? She came out of Vivian's office. And her clothes were in a mess. What? I was still a bit confused. Oh, why are you so stupid? Rosie was so anxious that she jumped. This time, her name isn't on the list to return to the city. But yours is. What do you think's going on? My head went hot. Looking at this familiar yet strange place, I suddenly came to my senses. Was I reborn 50 years ago? Pearl, I'm telling you. You must be on guard against her. Understand? Vivian is in the archives department. She's in charge not only of personnel file management but also of distribution and transfer work. I've long thought there was something wrong with that Wendy. You must be on guard. Understand? My hands and feet were numb as Rosie pulled me along. I was back at the farm again. In my previous life, Rosie had also reminded me like this. But I never took it to heart. So this afternoon, after going out to work, I was tricked back to the dormitory by Wendy. Unexpectedly, there was a person hiding in the dormitory. Just as he was about to insult me, the door was suddenly kicked open from outside, and this embarrassing scene was seen by everyone. Gordon, the dissolute man hiding in the dormitory, said that he and I were in a relationship, that I was already his. The crowd was in an uproar. I was left with no way to defend myself. But then, my name disappeared from the list of people returning to the city. And my reputation was ruined. Wherever I went, people pointed at me. Everyone said that I couldn't stand being alone and was a slut. Just when I was in despair, Spring came to me. He said he believed in me and was willing to marry me. This made me, who was in despair, seem to see a ray of light. Later, I got married and stayed. At first, he was indeed okay to me. When the child was 2 years old, I found out after he got drunk one time that the incident where I was insulted by Gordon was actually a scheme set up by him and Gordon. At that time, if I had just humiliated married Gordon directly, or if I was isolated by everyone as I was later, and finally he stood up like a savior and married me, that would have been fine. Anyway, having fulfilled my insertion, I only had these two options. The result was that either he or Gordon could get me. After I learned the truth, I had a huge row with Spring. But after he knew that the matter was exposed, he simply gave up and started hitting me. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law also cheered him on the side, and sometimes they even joined in. But I endured all of this for the sake of the child. This endurance lasted for most of my life. But later I found out that among the people who set up the steam back then was also my adopted sister. In order to prevent me from returning to the city, she, Spring, having fulfilled my insertion, Gordon, and Wendy set up this seamless scheme against me. If it weren't for the time when Spring broke free of my ribs and injured my internal organs, and she suddenly appeared on my deathbed and told me everything, I would still be kept in the dark. In the previous life, everyone achieved their goals. Except me. I was ruined for a lifetime. I hated so much. Oh, Pearl. The seam of your pants is coming apart. Hurry up and go back to change a pair. I looked up and at Wendy who was speaking. What's wrong? Dumbfounded? Wendy had tin braids and a look of concern on her face. Hurry up and go back to change. Or it won't be good if others see it later. I looked at the big tear on the thigh of my pants and smiled. It's okay. I'll tie my coat around it and go back at noon. Wendy's face changed. Oh, no. If these lecherous men see it, won't they take advantage? She put down her hoe. Come on. I'll go back with you. I let her pull me back, half resisting. Just like in the previous life. When we arrived at the dormitory, she asked me to go in first to change my pants while she waited outside for me. Looking at this person who had ruined my life in the previous life, I smiled faintly. Okay. While Wendy turned her back, I suddenly grabbed her hair tightly and pushed her into the room. She was greatly alarmed. Pearl. What are you doing? What answered her was the door that I slammed shut with a bang. Let me out. Pearl. What are you do? WUU. WUU. I looked at the gradually rising sun. And the violent emotions in my body dissipated a lot. When I saw the crowd rushing over from afar, I calmly avoided to the place where the clothes were being dried at the back. Immediately after, the door was kicked open. Then the sound of wailing came. After a while of chaos, the sound gradually died down. Not long after, 3 or 4 people came to me with serious expressions and took me to the office of the educated youth office. The office was full of people. Inside, Wendy's clothes were in disarray, and she was crying uncontrollably. As soon as she saw me, she jumped up. Bitch. You framed me. Wendy was acting out a Dewey's injustice. She said that I framed her. She kindly accompanied me back to change my pants, but was pushed into the room, almost getting insulted. As soon as she finished speaking, Vivian looked at me seriously. Pearl, is what Wendy said true? I was puzzled. Why would I frame her? What's the motive? When these words came out, everyone was also stunned for a moment. Yeah. What was the motive? Even Wendy herself was stunned. You just. But she UE'd for a long time and couldn't say anything. As for Gordon, I had never even seen him before. Even if he wanted to implicate me, he couldn't. I don't care. It was her. It was Pearl who pushed me in. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't. I don't want to live anymore. Believe me, it was really her. Naturally, no one believed Wendy's words. Because Gordon's words were the same as in the previous life. He said that he and Wendy were in a relationship. Although he was also strange why it was supposed to be another person who came in. But in the end it was Wendy. But for Gordon, it actually didn't matter. He just wanted a wife. Whether it was Pearl or Wendy. Anyway, he wouldn't lose out. As long as it was a girl from the city. After this matter became a big deal, someone came out to testify that they had indeed seen Wendy and Gordon talking in the small forest. Naturally, Wendy couldn't implicate me in this matter anymore. Now, it was Wendy who was isolated, in the same dormitory. No one talked to Wendy, and no one went out to work with her. Everyone avoided her like the plague. And at this time, there were still 3 days until I returned to the city. Although the matter of Wendy was resolved, having experienced the previous life, I still didn't dare to relax my vigilance. There was only one quota to return to the city. As long as I was a little careless, I was still very likely to be left behind for various reasons. And I must leave this place. Ivy was still waiting for me. Today was the last day of work. Everyone knew that I was leaving tomorrow. So the sisters in the same dormitory were discussing whether to hold a farewell party for me. Some people said that I was lucky and my name was on the list to return to the city for the first time. Others jokingly asked me if there were any connections in my family. I dealt with them casually. With a sweep of my eyes, I saw Ozzy carrying a hoe and walking towards the pigsty on the farm. My eyes narrowed. We had just cleaned that place. What was she going there for again? I perfunctorily said a few words to everyone and then carried my hoe and followed her. There were 30 or 40 big fat pigs in the pigsty. Every New Year or festival, the pigs slaughtered here would have their meat distributed to various places. So we always kept this place very clean. But when I arrived, I didn't see Rosie. Just as I was about to leave, I heard low gasps coming from the small forest. Why are the people you found so useless? They can't even deal with 2 little sluts. She's leaving tomorrow. What about my quota? I stopped in my tracks and carefully walked towards the forest. When I was almost close to the bushes, my mouth was suddenly covered. I subconsciously wanted to struggle. But then I saw Ozzy walk in front of me and motion for me not to make a sound. I managed to calm down a bit. She pulled me and walked towards the other side, hiding under the wall root behind the pigsty. Not long after, a man and a woman came out of the forest. The woman was wearing a floral dress. When I looked closely, it was Vivian, my parents' adopted daughter whom I had seen when I was critically ill at the age of 80 in my previous life. Of course, she looked much younger now, but I still recognized her at a glance. and the person following behind her was Spring, my husband in my previous life. The two were a bit far apart, walking one after the other without talking, and soon left the small forest. After the two walked away, Rosie let out a big sigh of relief and looked at me with a serious expression. Just now, I saw a figure flash in the forest. When I followed, I found out that those two seemed to be talking about you. Pearl, don't go back to live tonight. Leave first. I'll bring your luggage to find you later. I was silent for a moment and then nodded heavily. Even if I risked my life, I had to go back. In the previous life, perhaps seeing me struggling in that small mountain village for most of my life, she not only inherited my parents' estate but also lived a loving life with my fiancé. Seeing that I was about to die without knowing the truth, the complacency in her heart couldn't be contained, so she still couldn't help but come and tell me everything. But what she didn't know was that when I learned that in order to get all of my parents' estate earlier and be with my fiancé, she designed a car accident that killed my parents. I wished I could get up from my sickbed and kill her. In the previous life, I didn't have this chance. In this life, I must go back. That day, I didn't go back. Rosie didn't bring my luggage out until after 8 o'clock at night. I didn't say any words of gratitude. I took my luggage and went to a hotel near the train station to stay for the night. The next day, I finally got on the train and returned to the city. After 2 days and 2 nights on the train, I finally returned to Nanchang. Naturally, my parents were extremely happy to see me. They also told me that after I left, they had adopted the daughter of an old friend. I looked at the doting expressions on the two elders' faces when they talked about Vivian. And when they said how Vivian was usually close to them, tears almost fell from my eyes. Perhaps they would never have thought that this well-behaved and lovely adopted daughter in their eyes had deliberately framed their daughter and sent them away. I casually agreed with them a few words and then went back to my own room. Seeing that I was about to go back to my room, my mother hurriedly said that since I hadn't been home for several years, the room had temporarily been given to Vivian to live in. It's okay. Isn't there a storage room next door? It can be tidied up for her to live in. I originally thought that my parents would not hesitate to help me move things. But the two of them showed hesitation. What's wrong? I was taken aback. My mother looked at my father awkwardly and then said, "Well, girl, you see that Vivian is not here now. It's not very good for us to move her things directly. How about waiting until she comes back?" My mother looked at me tentatively and cautiously. My face darkened. I never expected that when I was trying so hard to return to this home, my parents already had a substitute for me. And it seemed that this substitute held quite a significant place in their hearts. Of course, I couldn't argue with my parents, so I could only nod. My mother happily set up a simple bed for me. "Pearl, Vivian is using your bed. She's not here these 2 days. It's not good for you to sleep in her bed. Mom will set up a bed for you to sleep in first. I'll buy you a new bed in a few days." I watched my mother chattering on. Although my father didn't say anything, he also looked in agreement. So I could only nod. Vivian arrived home on the 3rd day. As soon as she entered the door, she enthusiastically took my hand and said she welcomed me back. If it weren't for the fierce look that inadvertently flashed in her eyes. If it weren't for the words she said in the previous life, looking at me lying on the bed triumphantly and stabbing me to the heart, I would really think she was welcoming me back. During the meal, my mother cooked several dishes that she liked. Seeing her deliberately whispering affectionately with my mother and playfully joking with my father, I slowly ate the rice in my bowl. My mother said, "You went out these days. Where did you go?" Vivian paused. Seeing that my mother was also looking at her curiously, she hesitated for a moment and was about to say something. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside. Vivian visibly relaxed. "I'll go open the door." "Vivian, guess what I brought you?" A familiar and pleasant voice came from outside the door. I looked up and saw a handsome man standing at the door. He held a bow hairpin in his hand and gently put it on Vivian's head with a tender expression. Perhaps my gaze was too intense. The man subconsciously looked up and looked at me over Vivian. The moment he saw me, the man's face paused, and then he showed surprise and quickly walked towards me. "Pearl, Ivy's surprise didn't seem fake. It was as if the person who had gently put the fashionable hairpin on Vivian, deaf now, and the person who had spoken harshly to me in the previous life, asking me if I couldn't live without a man, wasn't him. Brother Ivy. I endured the nausea and looked at him coyly. Sure enough, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Vivian standing at the door, staring fixedly at us. Her clenched fists were such that her nails almost dug into her flesh. My parents were very happy to see Ivy. We were originally engaged. If it weren't for my leaving, I should have married Ivy by now. Ivy didn't stay long. A minute or two after he left, Vivian said she was going downstairs to take out the trash and then followed him out. Thinking of the deep look Ivy gave Vivian when he left just now, I knew there must be something going on between them. I found an excuse and followed closely behind. Sure enough, as soon as I went out, I saw the two of them kissing passionately in the corridor. After a while, the two reluctantly separated. Brother Ivy. Now that sister is back, will you not want me anymore? The woman's voice was pitiful and extremely sweet. After a moment of silence, I heard Ivy sigh and say, "Go back. Be good." I opened the door and returned to my room. At night, I slept on the bed tittied up in the storage room, feeling a bit dazed. Vivian is the daughter of my father's comrade in arms. She moved into my house the year I left. Over the past few years, my parents seem to have regarded her as another daughter. If I were to say at this time that Vivian would kill them, I'm afraid they simply wouldn't believe it. Instead, they might scold me and thus alert the enemy. It seems that I have to find an opportunity to make Vivian reveal her true colors on her own. The opportunity came soon. Because of my return, my parents brought up the matter of my marriage to Ivy again. And Ivy also seemed very willing to marry me, showing no sign of any affair with Vivian. Even our two families were already discussing the date of the engagement. These days, Vivian was still extremely well behaved, showing no sign of anything wrong. However, the more this was the case, the more vigilant I became. In the previous life, she could plot to keep me in the countryside forever and kill my parents. I believe that in this life, she definitely won't be willing to watch me really marry Ivy. Soon, let out a low sigh. 2 days before the engagement, Vivian asked me to go out together. Sister is getting married soon. I want to give sister a piece of clothing. She asked me out on the pretext of buying clothes. For some reason, looking at her sweet smile, my heart skipped a beat for no reason. I knew that she was going to take action against me. Sure enough, after we went out together, she walked towards the less populated People's Park. This road was not the way to the supply and marketing cooperative at all. Seeing my puzzled look, Vivian smiled and explained, "Let's take a walk in the park first and go to the supply and marketing cooperative later." I pretended not to suspect anything and nodded. When we came to an abandoned pool, she suddenly said that she had forgotten her coat and asked me to wait here. She would be back soon. Seeing that Vivian was about to leave, I suddenly said, "Wait a minute." Vivian's back froze. She thought I had discovered something. She turned her head stiffly, her eyes dodging. "What's wrong, sister?" I looked at her steadily for a while and suddenly smiled. "Bring me some snacks when you come back. I'm suddenly craving them." I pretended to bury my head in opening my bag. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw that Vivian really relaxed. I sneered and took out the handkerchief I had prepared long ago and covered her mouth and nose. Vivian was unprepared and soon fell down softly. I took back the handkerchief and left the place. My mother was ironing the clothes I was going to wear the day after tomorrow while waiting for her to come back. During this time, my mother nagged several times and frequently looked towards the door. When I came back in the afternoon, I just said that Vivian had something to do and left first. We had already separated in the afternoon. Even Ivy was worried. After going out to look around, he accompanied my mother and waited until now. Disably, heading till Feldley. Ivy seemed more anxious than my mother. Vivian didn't come back until the middle of the night. As soon as she entered the door, she rushed towards me aggressively and raised her hand angrily. "What's wrong, sister?" I looked at her messy hair and inadvertently raised the corners of my mouth. Looking at her, even her walking posture seemed a bit strange. I affectionately grabbed her hand. Why did you come back so late? Sister? Were you bullied by someone? Tell sister quickly. I will definitely avenge you. I spoke so sincerely that even my mother looked at Vivian suspiciously. At this time, Vivian's eyes were red and swollen, looking as if she had really cried. My mother's heart skipped a beat, and she became nervous. Vivian, were you really bullied? Speak up. Vivian looked at my mother and suddenly saw Ivy, who was also in the room. Ivy was clearly very anxious. But because of their previous relationship, he avoided suspicion at this time. And the moment Vivian saw Ivy, her rationality finally returned. She let out a wail and threw herself into my mother's arms. I didn't see the road clearly when I came back. I fell and broke my knee. It hurts so much. Woo woo woo. After hearing this, my mother instead relaxed. You child. I thought something really serious had happened. As my mother spoke, she was about to roll up Vivian's trouser legs to look at her injury. But Vivian seemed extremely resistant and directly shook off my mother's hand forcefully. Vivian? This time, even Ivy looked at her in surprise. Vivian took a deep breath and could only force a smile. It's okay. I'll go take a shower first. Although Ivy was worried about Vivian, he didn't stay any longer and got up to leave. My mother kept winking at me, indicating that I should see him off. Ivy also looked at me expectantly. I lowered my head and looked at my toes. Actually, speaking of it, my relationship with Ivy used to be quite good. The parents of the two families had a good relationship and spent festivals together. Ivy and I were childhood sweethearts. When I was a child, I was his little follower. I followed him wherever he went. When I was a teenager, boys who showed favor to me suddenly appeared around me. When Ivy found out, he went to and from school with me every day. Later, he confessed to me and said that he would never marry anyone but me in this life. Before I left home, with his insistence, the elders of our two families had a meal together, and I also accepted a watch from his mother. My marriage to him was thus settled. At first, he often wrote to me, but gradually, I found that the letters became fewer, and our topics seemed to decrease as well. Later, I learned from the letters my parents sent me that their comrade in arms had entrusted his child to them on his deathbed. That child was named Vivian. Later, Ivy's letters to me became fewer and fewer, and in the few letters I received, there was always one name, Vivian. Later, the incident of me being framed by Vivian happened. In the previous life, she succeeded. I stayed in the countryside and lost the chance to come back, and she was with Ivy and even killed my parents. I looked at the door closed by Vivian with a gloomy face. I sneered. Vivian. Today's matter is just the beginning. There was one day left until my engagement to Ivy. Today, Vivian didn't come to me as she did before. Perhaps knowing that we had already had a falling out yesterday, she looked at me with extremely cold eyes. But when she met my half-smiling eyes, she hurriedly looked away in embarrassment. Today, my father and mother were at home making gift bags for the happy occasion. They often pulled Vivian and talked about the interesting things Ivy and I had in the past. When my mother said again that Ivy had looked for 2 or 3 hours at night to buy me the roasted chestnuts I liked, Vivian finally couldn't help but stand up suddenly, her face pale and extremely ugly. Vivian? My mother looked at her in confusion. Vivian looked at me steadily and then said, I'm going out for a walk. Accompanied by a bang, the door was slammed shut forcefully. At this time, even my parents noticed something was wrong. I stood by the window and watched Vivian walking in the direction of Ivy's house. Mom and Dad, I'm going out for a while. I quickly followed behind Vivian. I watched her enter Ivy's house and then go up to the second floor. I saw her knock on the door, and then she was forcefully pulled into the room, and the door was quickly closed. When I entered Ivy's house, I saw that big red wedding characters had been pasted in the house. There were also several large bamboo baskets in the corner of the living room, filled with a lot of wedding candies. Even on the outside of the bamboo baskets, red paper cut wedding characters were pasted. I stood quietly for a while, grabbed a handful of wedding candies from the bamboo basket, and then turned around and knocked on the door of the next door house. A woman in her 30s or 40s opened the door. She looked me up and down. "Who are you? Auntie. Do you think you could do me a favor?" I put the wedding candies into the woman's hand. When the woman heard that I needed people to help pack the wedding candies, she readily agreed. She not only called her daughter-in-law but also to half-grown boys. "The wedding candies to be packed are upstairs. You can come up with me to carry them down." I led the people upstairs. When the door was suddenly pushed open, two naked bodies were entangled together. Before I could say a word, the two people behind me opened their mouths, and sharp screams rang through the sky. An hour later, the parents of both sides gathered at my house. Vivian was sobbing, shrinking behind Ivy and tightly holding his arm. There was only Vivian's crying at the scene. "Okay. Stop crying. You keep whimpering. Isn't it unlucky?" Ivy's mother glared at Vivian, her eyes full of disgust. I took out my watch and put it into my mother's hand. My mother looked at me, sighed, and handed the watch to Ivy's mother. "What are you?" She was startled and stood up. My mother looked at Vivian, her eyes red, and turned her head away. "Look at this mess. Take it back." My mother took my hand and patted it soothingly. "Our Pearl said that her engagement to Ivy is off. As for what happens next, you better go back and deal with it." Ivy's mother opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. "You shameless bitch. You." She raised her hand and slapped Vivian. "Mom." Ivy didn't like it. He blocked Vivian behind him. "Mom. It's all my fault." He looked at me and said sincerely, "Pearl. It's my fault in this matter. Vivian has no parents. She's had a really tough time these past few years. You. Wait. Ivy. I don't understand what you mean. Do you mean that we've treated Vivian poorly these past few years?" My mother was stunned for a moment and looked at Vivian with red eyes. Vivian lowered her head and didn't say anything. Ivy also turned to look at Vivian and then continued, "Auntie. I know you've been kind to Vivian. But Vivian has taken care of you hard these past few years. She has her efforts even if not great achievements. You." "Shut up." Ivy's mother pushed him away, and then looked at my mother with red eyes. "Lingzi. It's my fault. I didn't educate my son well. Regarding Ivy and Pearl's engagement, as you said, it's off. I'll take the watch. Our family is sorry to Pearl. Really sorry." Ivy's mother knew, and if she continued talking, I'm afraid everyone wouldn't even be able to be ordinary friends anymore. She looked at Ivy hatefully and shouted, "Hurry up and get out. You embarrassing thing." Ivy was startled by the shout and subconsciously followed his parents and left. Vivian lowered her head and wanted to leave with them, but my mother stopped her. "Wait a minute. Since you're leaving, take your things with you. Our family is too small to accommodate you." A big shot. Vivian's face turned pale. She lowered her head and quickly packed her clothes and chased after them. Throughout the process, I followed behind her. This person has a bad heart. I hope she doesn't steal anything from my family. After Vivian left, my parents were in no mood. They sat in the living room for an hour or two. I cooked the food and brought it to the table and called them to eat. But they didn't seem to hear and were still wiping their tears there. I was angry in my heart. "What? Are you reluctant? It's not too late to call her back now if you are." As soon as the words came out, I actually regretted them. My parents are kind-hearted and always kind to others. Since they brought Vivian back, they actually already regarded her as part of the family in their hearts. But sometimes, sincerity may not necessarily be reciprocated. I helped the two of them to the chairs and stuffed a bowl of rice for each of them before saying, "Do you know why she came back so late yesterday?" My mother looked up and subconsciously said, "Didn't she say she fell?" I sneered. "Falling once doesn't mean she's dead. Even if she had one leg, she would have already arrived home." My mother was silent for a while, put down her chopsticks, and looked at me steadily. "Pearl, are you hiding something from me?" I sighed. I told them about the things Vivian tried to do to harm me yesterday. "What?" My mother stood up abruptly, looking at me in disbelief. "How could it be? How could it be?" The bowl in my father's hand almost fell on the table. I sneered again. "Why not? I also told them about the things Vivian had done during the few days she was away. I put the train ticket I found in Vivian's bag during the day on the table. The facts were in front of them. And they couldn't help but believe. With a bang. My father, with red-rimmed eyes, pounded the table heavily. Beast. Beast. He never expected that Vivian, who looked like a white lotus and behaved like a filial and obedient girl in front of them, had actually done so many vicious things. Thinking that after I came back, they made me live in the storage room in order not to make Vivian feel uncomfortable. He felt unbearably heartbroken. My mother also tightly held my hand in fear. Pearl. My Pearl. I'm sorry. Mom is sorry to you. Seeing that I had red eyes and didn't speak, my mother said fiercely. She wants to ruin my daughter and now wants to marry Ivy. No way. After saying that, my mother wanted to rush to Ivy's family to find Vivian. I quickly stopped the two of them. I have my own plans for this matter. It's not the time yet. The things Vivian did in the previous life were unforgivable. Ivy got entangled with Vivian behind my back. He shouldn't be let off so easily. Going to find Vivian and Ivy at this time would only benefit the two of them. Such two people should be tied together. The next evening, as soon as my father entered the door, he sighed with an ugly expression. It turned out that Ivy's family still agreed to the marriage of the two. Because no matter how reluctant they were, there was no way around it. After all, it wasn't just me who saw what happened to the two in the room that day. The successive shouts of the two women at that time almost attracted half of the people on the nearby street. In full view of the public, Ivy couldn't refuse to get married even if he didn't want to. Unless he wanted to go to jail. The day originally set for our engagement became a good day for Ivy and Vivian to get married. Ivy's family's wedding banquet was set for the evening. Originally, our family was in an awkward position, and it was inappropriate to appear at Ivy's family. But when Ivy's family's parents saw our family of three coming, they couldn't stop us and could only awkwardly arrange us at the table. Ivy's family was doing well. Although they were dissatisfied with Vivian's entry into the family, there was nothing they could do. After all, Ivy liked her. Ivy's family's parents could only reluctantly accept it. Fortunately, the wedding candies and the reserved banquet were already made. It was just that the wedding banquet had a few more tables than the engagement banquet. Although my parents didn't know why I asked them to come, they were quiet throughout the whole process. They ate and drank as usual, and there was no sign of anything wrong. Until the newlyweds started toasting. Vivian had two braids, with red velvet flowers tied on the braids. Her big red clothes made her look somewhat festive. It could be seen that Ivy's movements were slow. He seemed to be deliberately slowing down the speed of toasting. But no matter how slow, it still came to our table. Uncle and Aunt, thank you. If it weren't for you asking Brother Ivy to take more care of me, we wouldn't. She smiled shyly, but the meaning was self-evident. My parents' faces suddenly changed and turned extremely pale. What Vivian said was like stabbing my parents' hearts with a needle. What she meant was that if it weren't for my parents bringing her here and asking Ivy to take care of her everywhere, she wouldn't have gotten together with Ivy. If I wanted to blame anyone, I could only blame my parents. Seeing that my mother was on the verge of collapsing, I gave them a soothing look and then turned to look at Vivian. With a slap, I slapped Vivian hard. She covered her face and looked at me in disbelief. How dare you hit me? She looked at Ivy and then looked at me viciously. Do you know what day it is today? How dare you hit me? Slap. Slap. I gave her two more slaps. What? Do I have to pick a day to hit you? Huh? Vivian wanted to rush at me, but Ivy quickly grabbed her arm. He looked at me with a complicated expression. Pearl, I'm sorry to you, but choosing to cause trouble on this day. Do you want to break up with my family? I sneered. Break up? Did he? Ivy, really think that after doing such a shameless thing and marrying Vivian, our two families could still be friends? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw two policemen coming over. So I pulled my parents and sat down again. The news that Vivian was taken away in full view of the public by two policemen almost quickly spread throughout several nearby streets. Ivy never expected that the white lotus in his heart was actually a black-hearted lotus. When he learned that Vivian had actually bribed someone to almost rape me, and was also going to keep me in the countryside forever, His eyes almost popped out in shock. And when Ivy's family's parents learned that their newly married daughter-in-law was actually a loose woman, they wished they could tear her apart. Unfortunately, the things Vivi and it always had to be paid for. She won't be able to get out without staying in prison for 7 or 8 years. Unfortunately, she and Ivy had already held a wedding banquet, and she was Ivy's wife. Wherever they went, people looked at Ivy's family with strange eyes. Especially the incident that Ivy and Vivian were caught in bed that day was even more of a topic of conversation after meals. Later, the story that Vivian originally wanted to harm me but was instead raped also spread. Now everyone would point and talk outside Ivy's family whenever they had the chance. Ivy was originally an accountant in a paper mill, with an iron rice bowl job. But now the factory directly fired him, and his parents couldn't bear the pointing and talking of others and didn't dare to go out at all. One day later, my mother sighed and told me Ivy's family had sold their house and was going to leave here. Before Ivy left, he came to see me once, but my parents stopped him. In their eyes, Vivian wasn't a good person, and Ivy was no better. He clearly had me, his fiancé, yet he still lingered on with Vivian. Just for this reason, he wasn't a good match. Ivy didn't see me. He stood outside the door for a long time before turning around and leaving dejectedly. Half a year later, my parents and I also left the city. Of course, it wasn't to run away. It was because I was admitted to a university in Beijing. My parents were worried about me going to Beijing alone, so they insisted on selling the house in our hometown and going with me. Actually, I was also very happy. After all, in the previous life, the fact that Vivian killed my parents still left a deep shadow on me. In this life, although I sent her to prison in time, no one knew if Vivian would take malicious revenge after she got out. It was good that my parents sold the house here and left. A few days before the start of school, our family of 3, carrying big and small bags, squeezed onto the green skin train, sweating profusely. The sound of clatter resounded in our ears as we left this city. My parents were sitting opposite me. Although their eyes were full of unease, they were also filled with anticipation for the future and yearning for a new life. I withdrew my gaze and took out 2 apples for each of them. It was so nice. In this life, they were still by my side. And I was no longer the me who was trapped in the hopeless quagmire of marriage, feeling that life was worse than death. It was so nice. The end.